And there we go. We are live. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another recording of Feed Your Brand Live. We are making some new changes. I hope you noticed it. I hope you noticed that there was an event that was posted out there on social media that said, hey, this is the event, and it gave you the topics. And today we're going to talk about maximizing podcast advertising. So I really am excited about this sort of new model, Tom.
I am too.
Yeah, so hopefully this is going to work really well and going to really show us. Oh, there we go. My view wasn't on gallery, and it matters. So it was on gallery and not on speaker
I
view,
was
which
going to
is
say,
what I
you
like
want
to
it on
do.
speaker view,
I want
right?
it on
Yeah.
speaker view. So for those of you who are watching this on the live stream or listening in on our Zoom platform, where we have all of our clients tuning in, where they can ask questions, we like to record it in the way we want it to be seen in the live stream. Of course, we're capturing gallery view, speaker view, shared screen view, separated audios. We're a podcasting company, so of course we capture it every which way for video and audio. But when you want to control the view of how it looks on live stream on a social platform, what you see, the person who's recording it sees, is what is out there. So what I see is what's out there. And so what I found is that lots of people do the gallery view, which either looks side by side if you're looking at it on your computer, or above and below, which is weird because who's talking doesn't always switch to the top or the bottom. And so it's a little weird in the gallery view if you're using it on your mobile phone. And so we prefer speaker view when we're live streaming.
Well, and truly, the way Zoom saves the videos, the speaker view and the recorded one is always side by side. Depending on how you're viewing it on your device, it might be up or down or have multiple, more or less people. Even on your phone, when you have a large group, like 6 or more people, you have to go page to page to see everybody. They're not all on one page. So anyway, it varies, but how you are showing up on social, I think, matters to a lot of people. So anyway, just a little bonus tip. That's not our topic today.
No, it's not.
We're going to record our topic as a Feed Your Brand episode here, and then we'll have then we'll end the live stream, and then only our clients here in the Zoom will have the opportunity for discussion and Q&A.
That's right. So shall we get started?
Let's do it. Hey everyone, welcome to Feed Your Brand. I'm Tom Hazard with my co-host and better half, Tracy Hazard. Today, we've got an exciting topic for you regarding ads in your podcast. And Tracy, I have to admit, I'm forgetting the exact title of what we're calling today. You probably have it there.
I do. Maximizing podcast revenue. Because if you're going to run ads, or you're going to run affiliates, or you're doing anything where you're making some calls to action. And so we say ads, but we really also mean promotions, right? So it could be your promotions, your own advertisements for your companies that you're putting on your own podcast, but it could also be third-party ones from other companies. So we want to maximize our revenue from our podcast. And our guide today, the tips and steps we're going to talk to you about, are about securing paid advertisements for your show. So specifically outside, because a lot of what you do in optimizing your show actually precludes you from making enough money.
So really what we're talking at first here, Tracy, isn't it right that we're talking about making sure your show is properly prepared for really being what it needs to be to attract third-party advertisers. Is that right?
Yeah, third-party advertisers or affiliates. So it doesn't mean somebody's paying you ad dollars, and it's certainly not programmatic ads through any of those companies that say, oh, we'll place ads on your show. This is not what we're talking about, because they do not care about the quality of your show. A play is a play is a play. That's all they care about out there. It's on volume, and you're just one of many. And they're making lots of money on their end, and you're making very little.
In fact, they don't care about anything about the content of your show. And that's why they only want to put ads on the very beginning. All they care is if anybody listens to the first couple of minutes. They don't care if anybody listens to any more of the show, which is really something that, if it's not obvious, Tracy and I don't find a lot of value in that for pretty much any podcasters. Maybe if you have a show that has 500,000 plays a month and you run it out on the beginning and you don't care if it's relevant to your topic. There may be some shows that are like that, but the vast majority of us are really not in that camp.
Right. And, 10,000 plays per month is still a really good show. And you should be able to monetize that if those 10,000 listeners are in an amazing niche. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about even if you have a smaller size show, but you would like to take affiliates, advertisements, or promo your own stuff, there are some things that preclude you from making enough revenue. And so some of them are in the setup side of things, the very first way you started your show. And we need to clean these things up. So if you haven't started yet and you're listening, think about this as you're strategically planning. And if you've already started but didn't really think you were going to take advertisement and you've done some of these things, it's not too late to fix it. You can always pivot your show. That's the wonderful thing about podcasting is the flexible feed. I can change my cover art. I can change the name of my show. I can change my description. I can move the model on anything and it automatically updates in my entire feed.
That is true. I think we've pivoted our various shows many, many times over the years, right? Things change. You want to update it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing that we want to highlight should be obvious, but it's really not obvious to most.
And most podcasters don't like hearing this. They really don't.
They don't. It's a little ego blow.
It's a little tough love, okay?
Yeah. It's get rid of all the references to you in the dominant positions of the name of your show, your cover art, and at the first couple of paragraphs of or the first couple of sentences of your description, right? If an advertiser is using your show as a vehicle for advertising, then it really needs to be about the audience because that's who they want to reach. So everything should be geared towards being the right place to reach that audience and not all about you. That doesn't work well with advertisers.
Now, there are, I want everybody listening who is a podcaster whose face is on their cover art to really listen to this, because there is a place for you to be highlighted and featured. It is your show. Absolutely no question. All we're suggesting is the podcast cover art, which is the first thing people see in their listening app, may not be the best place to do that.
Exactly. Cover art, title, description, just the first couple of sentences. It doesn't mean don't want to say it's hosted by, right? Like we want that in there, hosted by expert, but we just don't want the whole thing to be about you. And the intro. So that's my next tip on you is get rid of the overly salesy long intro that is all about you. We want the intro to get them into the show quickly because they want the intro to get them into the ad quickly, right? Like this is not something that it confuses people when you have these overly long intros and there's mixed messages, calls to action, and salesy stuff in there. So if you want to take advertisers and you want to offer that model, then that is something you need to get rid of as well. Now, it's okay to get rid of it going forward if you don't have a system like we do at Podetize where you can strip out all your intros, you can replace them tomorrow. So if you haven't been able to do that, that's okay. But keep in mind that those other episodes will probably not attract as many advertisers. They won't be as excited about your back catalog as they would if you had it nice and clean from the beginning. But that doesn't mean you can't do it going forward. Please do it going forward because that's what most advertisers are going to check out your latest episode. They're going to see what you're doing today. The other stuff I want to get rid of is stop doing the stupid other ads. We were talking about pre-call, right? We were talking before about all these ad programs, right? These programmatic ads that are just stuffing minutes and minutes worth of ads. In fact, we just heard a client who has an ad for a producer, which we don't put ads on any of our clients' shows because it's a waste of time. It's going to get one person out of every 10,000 you hear, and it's not worth it to crowd our clients' episodes with that kind of advertisement.
Let me clarify that one because I think it requires a little bit of clarification. So we're talking about, customers hosting on our platform, but we don't produce their episodes. Their producer is running ads for their production company on a real estate related show. And very few of those, people who are listening to a real estate investing related show are gonna want to launch their own podcast and need a producer. So why on earth is that person allowing a producer to advertise to their audience? It's a distraction. It's not relevant to why anybody's listening. It's just a waste, really.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to offer somebody like they're going to give you a discount, which in this case we found out they weren't, right? Like if they're going to give you a discount or they're going to do something like that, put it in the post roll, put it after your outro, put it at the end, because then somebody's listened to the show and said, wow, that was really well produced. Now they've earned the right to maybe put that ad in only in that situation, but do not put them in the beginning of your show. You're just getting longer to get into the content, and that frustrates your listeners, and advertisers are going to have more confusing messages. They don't understand it. They hear the irrelevance and they're like, why would I want to advertise on this show? So you're making it so that nobody wants to advertise on your show. The next thing is like thinking about watching your playthrough. If you're not getting good playthrough and people are dropping out in the first couple of minutes, or you're not watching those stats and you don't understand what's going on in your own show on your episodes, and you're not seeing that consistently through, you actually don't really have a good show to advertise on. And that's something you then need to work on. How do I create stickiness so that somebody will go all the way through, so I can put multiple ad spots as needed, or I can put post-roll ad spots, mid-roll ad spots, put them in other places and not have to put them on the beginning, because all I can do is get somebody to click, start to listen, and then they give up. So you need to watch your playthrough if you truly want to make sure that you're providing value to your advertiser, because they're going to pay attention to whether or not they got conversion. And if nobody's listening to their ad because they aren't getting past the first 2 minutes of the show, then they're never going to hear the ad that's in the mid-roll position.
Really good point, Tracy. That's so important, as to making sure people are going to get through. In fact, that's related to a tip you were going to cover later, but that sometimes the most valuable ad position is actually a post roll one. And I know that's counterintuitive, but it's true. Maybe we'll talk about that more later.
Well, we just did that as an episode.
An episode of Feed Your Brand.
So you can go back and listen to that entire episode on that, about why we believe the post-roll position is the most valuable position. But it does mean somebody has to listen through your show to get to it.
That's right.
Now, if you're not getting enough playthrough and you're taking guests, you're doing interviews, the next strategy is to make sure you're getting the right type of guests, right? We want more right fit, relevant guests. They need to be valuable to the audience. They need to be valuable to the advertiser. These are things we have to think about. If we want advertisers in our niche industry, we know who they want to hear from. They're more than willing. Think about it this way. If they're more than willing to sponsor an event where that speaker is, then they're highly likely to want to hear them on your show too, right? They want to be associated with where those guests are, because that is good for their brand, good for their ads. So we definitely want to pay attention to that. And we don't want to just take anyone on our show. It can also increase our playthrough rate when we have really good, relevant guests that our audience care about. So it does two things. You want to take the next one, Tom? Because sometimes it's okay, but most often it's just not.
Yeah, sure. You got to think about your show, the content, and is it controversial? And I'll tell you, I'm really surprised sometimes certain podcast shows. Now, I'm not going to out anybody here because I don't think that is helpful, quite honestly. But some people who are in business, and presumably their business is not along political, ideological lines, make no secret about how they feel about certain political things. And honestly, while there are many different, actually thousands of different podcasts out there that are in the religious and spirituality category that talk about religion, most people in business, it's a pretty good rule of thumb to don't talk about politics and don't talk about religion, because they're divisive topics that make not only listeners potentially want to run in the other direction, or sponsors. Now, obviously there are exceptions to that. It's true.
It
In
may be
general,
why your show is advertisable, maybe why the
sure.
advertisers are attracted to you. So think carefully about the advertisers you'd like to attract. And does being controversial help you or hurt you?
Right.
Does picking a side on anything help you or hurt you? Or narrowing down your audience by saying we're only Christian, we're only Jewish, we're only Muslim, right? If we say that that's only our audience, that might be ideal actually for what you want to do, but it also might make it so that advertisers that you want are not attracted to your show. You have to think about that. And look, it's free speech. I really don't care which way you want to do this. But if you want to maximize your revenue, you have to be cognizant of who your advertiser is, because they cannot afford negative brand association. They're not going to spend money to have something that they don't want to be associated with. Right or wrong doesn't matter. That's the way it is. This is why TV advertising, streaming advertising, like all of this is the way that it is. I mean, look, Jon Stewart, if you want to go left on something, Jon Stewart just lost his show on Apple because he would not tamp back his speech about China. It happened. So it
And
happens
that's not
on
even
both
that,
sides.
that's not even really a political issue within American government politics. That was a corporate political
That's
issue
right.
between Apple and their factories in China where all their products are made. And, this is a complicated geopolitical issue that not only it wasn't even about sponsors, it's about the company footing the bill for his show, and they pulled the rug out from under it and said, you know what, if you're gonna be have your integrity to speak freely about anything you want, including China, you're not going to do it on Apple TV Plus. That's basically what they said, right? Agree with it, don't agree with it, that's fine. But I love podcasting. It is a safe haven of free speech, 100%. And we as a platform embrace that. And you can publish any topics on Podetize for anything. We're not the gatekeepers of that, ever. Now, listening apps have the right to be. And so do sponsors certainly have the right to advertise on your show or not. And that really relates to the next piece.
Well, I want to say one more thing before we go on to that. One of the things we built into our ad mixing platform was the ability to block a single episode. So if you so felt that you were compelled to say something, and you could keep all ads off that particular episode, block it from advertisement, essentially. So you would have no ad spots in it, nothing would go in it. And so that you could have an episode that was like that, where you didn't have the brand be side by side with something like that. So we do have some controls in our system that we built in. And think about that. If you're in control of your own ad spots, you're mixing them into your own show, that if you do decide you really feel like you need to make a statement because maybe it's very personal and your audience knows that and they need to hear it from you, then go ahead and do that. But don't take ads on that particular episode. And that's what you go back to your advertiser and say, hey, I'm going to do this. I want you to understand what this is, but I'm not putting your ad on this particular episode in a way of protecting your brand safety, right?
And in a lot of cases that will work. And in some cases the brand might say, just because you have an episode there at all, I don't really want to be associated with your show. And that would be their choice too. But I think a lot of times a carve out like that would work. In fact, in our system, you can just uncheck multiple episodes if you don't want to have ads put on them. That's your choice, certainly.
Right. And so that does go hand in hand with the next one, Tom.
Right, which is really about mature subject matter, especially mature language, profanity, things like that. Many advertisers won't care a bit about it because people are opting in to listen to you. This is not broadcast television or radio. The FCC has no jurisdiction or control over what we say in our episodes. Many sponsors are fine with it, but some may not be. And so you just want to be aware of that. If your show is
family brands. Think
Yeah,
about that.
if your show is an explicit show and you routinely, the F-bombs are flying here and there and all that, well, that's your choice. But there may be some brands that just don't want to be associated with that. They would rather be on a clean show. So
Absolutely.
things to consider. And again, this is about preparation, making your show be in the best possible condition to be attractive to advertisers, right? So
Yeah. So the next set of tips that we're going to give you are really about going forward, right? What are you doing with your episodes? How are you watching things? How are you going to get those advertisers? And what are you going to show them your value on? So here's something. You got to do longer episodes. If you're doing really short episodes, you need them to be long enough to fit a couple of ads in, because you're going to decrease your revenue potential just by not having enough ad spots. So think that through. Now, you don't want to inundate people with ads. That's, you don't want to like cram them in. So our rule of thumb is 4 ad spots every 30 minutes, but 2 of them need to be on the outside edges. So no more than 2 in the middle of a 30-minute show. Think about
and
2
it could be
mid-roll
a third of
spots.
the way through, it could be halfway through and 2/3 of the way through. You can spread them out and putting them in places where it's a natural break or a good fit for them to exist. You certainly never want to interrupt an important thought, or certainly never in the middle of a word. And that's what some of those programmatic ad systems will do. Kind of like, when you watch a YouTube video and it just pauses it in a really bad moment. They don't take any care in deciding where those ads go. After so many minutes and seconds, the ad's going to go in, it's going to pause that YouTube video. With podcasting, you have the ability to control that and make it be in an appropriate place. So that's really important.
Yeah. And then if that's not possible because of the way your audience is, like maybe they just don't have a long attention span, or if that's just not the model that you want to run your show in, do more episodes. And doing long shows, do more episodes might be another option to maximize your revenue as well, right? Now you have the ability to have more ad spots in a week, and your downloads are going up each week as well. So you're going to be doing a double increase in terms of more space for ads and more downloads for ads.
This is one of the things that a lot of podcasters don't realize, and I have this conversation pretty frequently, is that I see podcasters who are doing affiliate, taking advertisers, and starting to starting to actually monetize their show, and they have a limited number of downloads per month. Maybe 8,000, 10,000. Some people,
They've
less than
flatlined.
that. And that, well, yeah, but I see that they have already recorded and produced and have episodes scheduled out well in through the summer of the next year already. And that I just saw this recently with another podcast. I'm like, the fastest way you can provide more value, not only to your listeners, but also to your advertisers or the affiliates, and get more conversion,
Or your own promos.
Yeah, is increase the frequency of publication from once a week to twice a week. When you have a depth of episodes already recorded and produced, that's pretty easy, right? That you really just move up the publication schedule. Now, I'm not trying to give everybody more work to do. If all you can do is record enough to publish 1 episode a week, by all means, please do that. But if you're way ahead and you've got more than 6 months deep ready to go, well, you've got another 90 days to record more episodes. If you move it all up, what is 6 months ahead becomes 3 months. Now you're publishing twice the number of episodes in a given month. Every one of your listeners will download twice the number of podcasts. Your download numbers go up. And when your advertisement is directly tied to how many downloads you have a month, you're going to make more money. The advertiser is going to get more impressions. And sometimes just more impressions is enough to reinforce their brand message. So this is a win-win-win for everybody. Plus your listeners, they get more of you, which they've opted in, and they want more of you.
Yeah. And this is when we say do more episodes, this also means stop doing seasonal. So do not take seasonal breaks. That's fine for television series because they sell their advertisers in blocks. But you don't want to do that. You want monthly revenue. You want it to be steady. So stop doing the seasons. It is not in your best interest to do that. So when we say do more episodes, we don't even mean more than one a week is one model, but also making sure you're at least getting 52 weeks a year, right? So make sure that that's happening as well. So let's talk a little bit about the next one, Tom, which is know your stats, right? Like if you don't know how many downloads you're doing, that you're pretty consistently growing, that you're growing 15% in listeners month over month over month, that you've got this kind of, I'm going to call it consistent statistics going for you or consistent growth going for you, then maybe you're also not ready yet to start talk to the advertisers and you need to do a little boost up program, such as add more episodes in a given month and start to boost your growth for yourself.
And there are other things you can do also to increase listenership. And in fact, there's a couple new programs, not, shameless plug, there's a couple new programs at Podetize. We actually are advertising. We're offering to advertise your show to new listeners, and it's a part of our hosting program. So been reaching out to our existing customers about that and doing that here for the next couple months. But there are ways to grow your show beyond just do more work, publish more episodes. There are other ways to do that, and it's very important. But I also think you have the opportunity to test conversion,
which is the next one that we want to talk about, right?
Yeah. And if you've ever done email marketing, one of the first things you want to do is warm up that list and test how many people are going to open those emails, how many people are going to click on a link within those emails. We do this all the time at Podetize. We typically have a 40 to 50% open rate on emails that we're sending that are marketing related, not to our existing customers. But the conversion rate is something we're always trying to get up. Great, all these people open the email. Why aren't they clicking the link? Or we see they're clicking the link. They haven't really taken action on what we wanted them to. What is that conversion rate? From all the people that are listening, how many are going to click to go to a landing page for the sponsor? Now you can test these things, test conversion, survey your audience. How many people are going to take action? You can put up a little ad or promo for something that's not asking anybody to buy anything, but just to see how many people are going to leave that listening app and go to a landing page to get something. You can assess a conversion percentage, and then you can show that as value to a potential advertiser or sponsor.
So a really good example of this was back when we did our 3D print podcast. In the early days, we did a test. We actually did it with an advertiser because they were just like, hey, we hear about this podcast advertising thing. We've never tried it before. And we said, okay, well, let's see what we can come up with. And we came up with this program idea where we would give them a downloadable 3D print file that they could print on their own machine that was designed by us. So the advertiser offered the landing page. They would download, they put all their name, email address, and they get the file and they'd be able to do that. Well, originally they said, what if we just did it with sending them the actual print? So like they get it already printed off of our printer. And so we'd send it that way. So that we mailed it. And then there was a high demand and they asked for the file. So we ended up with over 37% conversion on the first piece of it. But when we also then offered the file to people who already had 3D printers, it was like 50% or something. It was crazy numbers that did it. And so the opt-in went nuts because it was something super valuable to the audience who loved us because they'd been listening to us for quite some time. We were like at least 150 episodes in by then. And they wanted to see some of our design work. They wanted to be able to print it on their machine. And so it was really relevant and personalized. And our audience just went crazy with that.
Now that's key, Tracy, is it was relevant. Now, obviously, how many 3D printing podcasts are out there? You can probably count them on the fingers of one hand, right? I mean, I
think there's still only like niche, 3.
Very niche audience. And we're not suggesting that all you have something similar you can do, but there is always something of value you, as the host of the show, can provide your listeners, and it can be a one-to-many thing. So, you don't have to physically mail things in the mail to them if you don't want to, something downloadable, but something of value, a reward for your listener for taking action and going to a landing page, which, by the way, can be linked right in the description of your episode. So you can mention to your listeners, hey, if you're willing to do this, go right in the description. There's a link there. And, so it's very easy for them to do it even while they're listening, because in most listening apps, you keep listening and you click a link within the description, it doesn't stop playing the episode for them. They can do it actively while they're listening. So
I want to say something here, Tom, though. There's a lot of people who think and train and coach people to say that you should put ads in from the beginning of your show to train your audience. And we are not fans of that. We actually find that it doesn't work, because your audience is like, are you really going to stick around for me? Are you going to be a good host? Like, oh, you're just doing this show as a vehicle for advertising, and it's obvious to me. So we highly recommend waiting until you hit 25 episodes before you start doing some of these tests. We find that it converts better. You get a better action, because at that time they say, I think these guys are going to stick around. They've given us half a year. Good job. I'm going to trust them and take action. So your listeners are just less likely to take action earlier on, because binge listeners especially are smart. And they know that there's lots of people in the podcast industry who quit their show and aren't sure if you're going to be one of them. So that's an important one to keep in mind as well. Yeah, so if you're going to do a test, wait.
And remember what Tracy said earlier about you don't have to put ads on every episode. You may not, you may always want to have your first 10, 12 episodes of your entire series to be blocked from having ads put on them at all. Why? Because new listeners will usually listen to your latest episode and then go back and listen from the beginning. So they'll binge through at least the first, 10, 12. And we used to find, even after hundreds of episodes, our listeners of our first podcast would be binging through, dozens and dozens and getting through all of them and say, hey, I'm on episode 54 and I have a question. They would write in or something, right? It does happen, but especially those first 10, 12 episodes, you have the opportunity to provide value to the listener, build rapport with them without the ads in those episodes. And then, if they're going to skip ahead, they'll get to where you are now, but you've hooked them. They trust you, they like you, they want to keep listening, and they won't mind listening to ads. In fact, that is an actual hard number I can give you. It was more than 65 or 67%, I think, of
67, I think,
podcast listeners do not mind listening to ads. Compare that to television and radio, where 3 to 5 or 6, I believe, percent don't mind listening to ads. The vast majority of listeners of radio and TV do not want to hear ads. They're annoyed by it. Podcast listeners, not the same way. They've opted in. They've chosen you. They're listening to you. They like you. They want to hear you. And if you need to present some ads to them, they don't mind. But even better than that, a large percentage of them will convert to the right call to action.
So I'm going to disagree with you slightly, Tom.
Uh-oh.
So on that first 10 episodes, I do agree with you. When you're in your first year, that keeping ads off of them is not a bad idea. But past that, it's a maximizing revenue strategy. So once you have some really good advertisers, your first episodes tend to be, you'll take a good look at them, and they might be 10% of your listening for the entire month. And so you don't want to take 10%. It depends on how you're getting paid. Of course, if you're getting paid per every 1,000 downloads, you don't want to miss the revenue on those first 10. But you also need to balance that against your listener growth. And if the ads are preventing listener growth, you kind of need to have that balancing act on it and do some testing. So maybe you want one ad in those episodes and not 2, or you just, are very cautious about it and you don't do it with a new advertiser. You wait till someone renews with you and you give it to them as a bonus. So there are ways to maximize your revenue on that. And that may be one of them. So be thinking about that.
You make a good point, Tracy. Look, this is a decision for each of us podcast hosts, and it's a business decision. Do you put ads on those very first episodes once you start having ads, or do you leave them off? Because those first episodes statistically will get the most listens of any episodes in your entire catalog, because they're the first ones. And even if people don't listen to all of them, they're going to go back and listen to those first ones. So that's true. They get the most listens, and it is valuable advertising space, no question.
So thinking with that in mind, you really do also want to make sure you have a method to track how your ads are doing. So don't just trust that your advertisers got that covered. You might need a click-through link. You might need a landing page yourself. You might need an affiliate code. Whatever it is, make sure that you are actually doing some tracking and modeling that. And when you go back to ask these advertisers for renewals, you've got the ammunition. You're not relying on them to tell you whether or not you did well. You're going to say, oh, you were, compared to all the advertisers I took this month, you were my number one ad in terms of conversion, and you did this amount, and we can track through this. Did it work on your end? Were you getting sales from that? And if it wasn't, let's see how we could partner to improve that in the next month. Like now you're making them a part of, they're thinking, oh, maybe my ads weren't bad like I thought they were. Now I could partner up and do something different, and you've got them on the hook for the next month. And if you're seeing them as being some of your best advertisers, meaning that there's the best conversion going on, move them to those first 10 episodes because they're obviously relevant to your listeners. So now you're going to not only convert on the people who maybe aren't committing to your show completely, but if there's relevance factor in there, you're going to increase the conversion rate on those episodes as well.
So Tracy, this was a really good point, and I want to put a little emphasis on it. I know this is a little longer episode than we usually do, but this is important. You need to be able to prove to yourself and to the advertiser that your show converts, and if they didn't get enough of whatever they are measuring as value or success of the campaign, there's a lot of variables in any ad campaign, right? So if they do not feel that they got enough value out of the advertisements that ran on your show, it's all too easy for an advertiser to say, oh, your show was the problem. It wasn't my product or the offer I made or the way that I presented my product. There are so many variables. We want to be able to show them, look, we've got this many people clicking through in this week and in this month of time from the ads on our show to the landing page on our website. That's a lot of value. You got a lot of people taking action. If they didn't buy your product, maybe you ought to reconsider the ad, the offer, the product, the pricing. I mean, so many other things for them to dial in, but you can show them, hey, listeners took action. They went. They just didn't buy what you had to offer or didn't take whatever action you wanted.
And I want to make sure that you understand that we're proposing a model where you're selling ads on a monthly basis, not on locked into that episode for the lifetime of it, because that will always be less. For an active show, the average number of total listens. Okay, this is not your show in particular. Yours might be 10 times this, and great, good for you. But the average number of listens on an active show, one that's continually publishing and publishes 25 episodes or more, is 1,400 listens. And some of those listens don't come in month one. And so that's important to understand that that's its lifetime listens on average. A show that quits their show after 10 episodes, their average listens are under 300 lifetime. So significant
for a particular
difference.
Episode, is that what you're saying?
For a particular episode, yeah. And so, multiply that times where you are, right? Because that's just the average across all the shows, and lots of shows barely get 10 listens, right? And then there are those that get 500,000 listens. So that's an average across every single episode that we found in our numbers here. But this is important for you to understand that many, many listens will come in the next 60 days or the next 30 days. So you want to encourage them that, hey, if this was working on this episode, you want to stay into it. So renew with me the next month. Remember, we're talking about maximizing your revenue potential here from your advertiser, that's a way to do that. Which brings me to one more final thing that I thought of that wasn't on our original list of 12 items. So this is bonus number 13, but post recording your ads is an extreme important conversion factor. Host recorded ads perform 3 times better. I think that's low, but 3 times better than a recorded ad from your advertiser. And I know you're thinking, wow, but getting their ad recorded, it's so much easier.
It is easier
But
if they provide you a completely produced ad that you can just run. No question, it's easier.
but if it's only going to do a third of what you could be doing if you did a host record a personal ad for it, isn't that worth a little bit of your time? You're a podcaster, for goodness sake. You're behind the mic. Go do it. It doesn't take that long. So now sometimes I say, like, you know what? Maybe you just want to test the waters, see if the advertiser's right, use their ad, and then in the next 30 days, you record the host recorded. This is a great way to get them into a multi-month program. And so say, hey, we're going to run a 90-day program. It's X dollars per month or X dollars for the 90 days, right? And then your ads come out, right? You don't leave them in there. This gives you a chance to maximize your revenue and sell the next 90 days and the next 90 days to someone completely new. So that's also possible. And you can go back and say, hey, they're already programmatically in here. We've already got it running. It seems to be working really well. Would you like to renew at a discounted rate? If they don't renew, in the next week, then you go and replace them and find a new advertiser. So that helps you push that sales model and make sure that you maximize revenue across your entire show catalog, across your entire podcast.
A lot to think about, but the great thing is you do this preparation and then, you're ready. Start testing.
I love that. Well, so there's lots of other episodes that we've done in and around advertising. They're going to be linked in the show notes for this episode on monetize.com. But we also want to make sure you look in the description, right? It's going to be in there. If it's on YouTube, there should be descriptions right there with all the linked episodes so you can know what else to watch next. So if you want to do some of those things we referenced, here's some of those stories, here's some of those tips, they're going to be there for you. That's what we're here for. Plus, you can always reach out to us and say, hey, do you have a tip for this? I guarantee you we do. We've probably got a video, an episode, or a short tip that shows you how to do it.
We have quite a large resource library with a lot of those things. So don't be afraid to reach out. All right. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time on Feed Your Brand. This has been Tom and Tracy. Until then.
And for those of you in the live stream, we'll see you next week. Take care.